Dark Souls, a game that can strike both fear and excitement from gamers across the world, and one thing that it's notorious for is its extreme difficulty and unforgiving bosses. I played through this game for the first time the other day and was left speechless, so much so that I decided to make a video on it, and there's nothing more unique and creative than a video ranking its bosses, right? My criteria for this will be how good the area is, how the boss looks, and how enjoyable the fight is. And as you know, this list is completely subjective, so feel free to let me know what changes you would make to my list and tell me your favourites. What is probably the lowest point in the whole game, the Bed of Chaos is an impressively bad boss. I mean, firstly, to actually fight the thing, you have to both hit the left and right side, which for some reason lets the opposite hand go. And that's only if you don't get swiped by its almost impossible to dodge hands. And then you have to jump onto this little pathway to the thing that's controlling it, and it's this pathetic little bug you have to hit once and then it's dead. Terrible boss, zero payoff. I mean, whose idea was it to make a platformer boss for Dark Souls? I'm looking at you, Minazaki. The Pinwheel is one of, if not the most hated boss in all of Dark Souls, and all of the Soulsborne series in general. And it's not really hard to see why. I mean, just looking at him, he's goofy. It's not even like an intimidating kind of goofy, but just goofy. And there's nothing else to it. He's got this magic attack that can deal a bit of damage, but nothing that'll absolutely kill you. And his mates, his friends, don't do anything. I mean, one shot and they're dead. And even if you have a weak weapon, you'll absolutely destroy this. What? You said the fight's over? Well, that was shit. What good is a boss when it can be destroyed without even moving? I mean, with a name this disgusting, Ceaseless Discharge, you'd expect something more than this. I mean, at least the boss looks cool, but the rest of it is so underwhelming. I guess it's a nice indicator for the areas to come after it. The Moonlight Butterfly to a melee build is the most boring fight you'll have in the game. The butterfly flies around for most of the fight, hitting you with a variety of only 3 magic attacks that you're stuck on a narrow bridge to dodge, and eventually it perches onto the bridge for about 10 seconds, open for attacks, until it charges up for an AoE, and then starts to fly again. And to top it off, the area isn't even that interesting. While the boss looks beautiful, it's an absolute drag for melee builds. The Capra Demon is weird because it just feels unfinished. I mean, first of all, just to get to the guy, you have to fight 2 dogs, 2 mobs, and another 3 dogs, which as we know is the most frustrating enemy in any Soulsborne game. And in the actual boss area, you have to fight the boss, who is extremely aggressive, and another 2 dogs inside a cramped area. And most new players don't know about the shortcut from filing Shrine to the area, and the corpse run just becomes plain annoying. For quite an intimidating boss, this one can be easily beat through a glitch, and for new players it's practically unavoidable. You're fighting in this cramped, lava-filled area, and it's actually a fun fight when he's not glitching into the walls and disappears, and the fight's over. Even though it's a reskin, the Stray Demon can still be an enjoyable fight, until you find its patterns and then it becomes mind-numbingly repetitive. The magic AoE adds a nice challenge, but it doesn't change much to the fight other than adding an extra few rolls. It also doesn't help that to get to the boss you have to lose half your health. The Taurus Demon is another boss who is quite easy to beat with the right tactics. Once you've fought through Undead Berg, you come out onto this narrow bridge. Once you've come far enough, you hear arrows being shot at you from behind, you run up the ladder and kill both the archers. Now keep this ladder in mind because it's important. And once you've come far enough on the bridge, the Taurus Demon jumps down from the tower and you're faced with this huge monster with a massive axe. If you want a challenging fight, you fight it face on. However, climbing up the ladder and doing plunge attacks is a tactic I used here and it worked way too well. The Dark Sun Gwendolyn is a secret boss that you can only access through killing the amazing chest ahead. And why would you even think of killing this goddess is beyond me, but here we are. While I do think this is an interesting concept for a boss, it can get a little tedious if you don't have strong enough weapons. I mean, all you have to do is wait for her to shoot arrows and you're free to go wild. Not a hard boss, but not a bad one either. I think we all remember our first time booting up Dark Souls and almost immediately getting destroyed by this fat ass. In fact, here is a live reenactment of what my first time fighting this guy actually looked like. And then after getting destroyed, you realize that there's an open door and you make your way through there. You find a sword and shield and drop down onto the big guy, and the fight is quite easy from here. Although it's not very difficult, it's something you can look back on fondly. You know, sometimes I like to fight him in New Game Plus to see how far I've come. Yes, this boss is a reskin of a reskin, but probably my favourite of the three. While the others have quite vanilla attacks, this one adds one that can make the fight a little more interesting. Firstly, there's the almost impossible to dodge axe slam, and then there's the magic attack which keeps you on your toes for most of the fight. While creativity falls with this boss, it's still certainly fun. Sen's Fortress, or as some people call it, Sen's Playhouse, is one of the most frustrating areas in the game. A place filled to the brim with traps, swinging axes and humanoid snake men, this place is burned into the memory of gamers everywhere. And to top it off, the Iron Golem is actually quite a fun fight, despite its glitches. I mean, what's even happening here? Other than that though, the Iron Golem is a cool looking boss with some really interesting moves. From one of the coolest looking areas to one of the coolest looking bosses, Ceaseless is nothing to scoff at. While most people, including myself, will go straight for the boss and hit it, you'll notice that it heals almost straight away. Then you'll remember that in the cutscene it focused heavily on the crystal, and then you break it and it can't heal anymore. While you can easily hit it by sticking close to it, the crystal attacks it uses can inflict curse, and you do not want to get hit with curse. Let me repeat, you do not want to get hit with it. While it's a cool looking boss, it is still quite an easy fight. Gaping Dragon is easily one of the coolest and most intimidating bosses in the game. I mean, the first time I saw the guy, I thought that I would have to spend ages fighting him. But alas, there is an attack you can bait and kill this thing in only a few minutes. Don't get me wrong though, seeing this thing chase you while you bait it is still a terrifying experience. The Bell Gargoyles are probably the first true wall for Dark Souls players. What is essentially a DPS check, this boss is a reminder to the player to upgrade their abilities and weapons. But aside from the purpose of the Gargoyles, these guys are quite a fun fight. Although they're pretty weak, they hit like a truck for new players. But even before that, the road to the boss is a very difficult one, fighting a sorcerer and like 20 hollows. The fight, however, is quite easy if you're aggressive and strong enough to kill the first one before the second has time to attack. Then you can wait for the second guy to breathe fire and you can easily kill them. But guys, please don't be like me. Sif is quite a goofy looking boss, but don't be fooled, this guy hits like a truck. Its fast and hard to navigate movements make this boss all the more fun to fight. Sif's 2-spin attack almost became my downfall just because of how powerful it is and the way it can hit through your shield with ease. And apart from the actual battle, the lore of this fight is enough to bring a grown man to tears. The one problem I have with this fight is how unrealistic it is. Yeah, listen, I know that sounds ridiculous for a game like Dark Souls, but this guy's practically impossible to stagger. And while the limping at the end is okay, it doesn't seem to react at all during the fight. Great boss though. Crossbreed Priscilla is an incredible ending to probably the best area in the game. It's a shame that most people won't get to see this area just because of how secretive it is. Just to get there, you have to curl up in a ball, go back to the asylum, fight another boss, fight a Black Knight, fight the guy who gave you Estus Flask, grab the peculiar doll, head to Enolondo, look at this painting, and to engage the boss, you have to hit it first. But if you do all this, you'll find that this boss is quite a unique one, with it becoming invisible and you actually have to find the footprints in the snow. However, this boss is mostly this high because of the previous reasons. It's cool aesthetic and area. If you already know what to do, it's a very easy fight. However, just for having the best area in the game, Crossbreed Basilic just cracks the top 10. Gwyn is a fantastic fight to cap off a fantastic game. Gwyn is one of the most powerful bosses you'll fight in the game, but unfortunately it can be made easy if you're confident enough in your parrying abilities. Practically all of his attacks apart from the grab is parryable, although if you aren't, you're certainly in for a treat because this guy is strong, fast and fiery, and there's little to no time to heal. But after you beat him, you're faced with two options: light the bonfire and perpetuate the Age of Fire, or walk away and begin the Age of Dark. Two endings which I think are incredible. Oh, thank God. This must be the way out of Blighttown. Oh no, is this a boss? Oh, God, what is that thing? Is that a... Oh my. The Chaos Witch Quail Egg is probably the perfect ending to one of the most dreaded areas in any game, Blighttown. An area that can bring many gamers to tears, Blighttown lives in infamy as an area every Dark Souls player has at one point been scared shitless of. And this boss continues this area's aggressiveness with its own fast and aggressive boss. You absolutely cannot be passive and stay back with this one, because if you do, it'll be sure to run at you and stick to you like glue. However, the Quail Egg's attacks are too high to hit you, so stick close. Also, be sure to keep an eye on her because she's the one who dictates what the spider does. If her hand is on its head, the spider will spit lava, but if she hugs it, the spider will do an AoE attack that could end the fight. Overall, this fight is fantastic and a good halfway point to the game. We have finally gotten into the DLC bosses, and yes, the DLC is this incredible. And what an introduction. I mean, first you get dragged by this massive hand and taken into this narrow area. You walk forward and see this part lion, part ram, part bird, part scorpion boss staring you down. This thing is probably one of the most intimidating bosses you'll find in the game, with its glowing red eyes staring daggers into you the whole fight. And trust me, its bark matches its bite. With attacks that could kill you in one hit if you're not careful, and sticking to its side won't work because he'll use the tail, and if that doesn't kill you, the poison will. Oh, and if you were thinking of being passive and putting your shield up the whole fight, he'll use a flurry of attacks that'll be sure to drain your stamina and eventually kill you. And if that wasn't enough, he's got lightning balls. He can shoot at you whenever he feels like it. All of these pressures result in one of the funnest fights in the entire game, having to use your mobility and quick thinking to overcome it. If this was a list for the coolest entrances in Dark Souls, Nino would certainly top the list. I mean, look at it. While I do agree that the game falls off in quality after Anor Londo, Nino is an exception. After fighting and battling your way through the Catacombs and Tomb of Giants, you're faced with one of the most intimidating bosses you'll find in any game. Nino is what seems to be an amalgamation of skeletons with a huge sword and magic cloak, and it's terrifying. Oh, and did you know that you have to fight him and other skeletons, big or small? And you can't just run past them either, and I learned that the hard way. Also, be sure not to be too greedy because you'll end up with a situation like this. Luckily, this boss has an AoE attack that will kill the skeletons, but unfortunately they respawn. What I like to do in this fight is to get as close as possible and hit him because his attacks will mostly glance over you. And when he's gearing up for an AoE attack, obviously roll back and dodge it. Nino is honestly one of the most satisfying kills you get in this game. I guess you could say he's pretty neato. I'm sorry. Oh boy, this sure is a boss. To cap off the DLC, we have what is probably the hardest boss in the game, or at least in the New Game Plus, because I fought and beat this guy in 2 tries last time and it was not this hard. So to describe this boss, if you mix Artorius' aggressiveness, Smo's power, and Iron Golem's size, you have Manus. And this was the hardest boss I've ever faced. Every attack it does could deal at least half your health, and the flurry that he does just kills you if you're caught in it. Do you want to know how many times I died before giving up getting footage of me winning? Do you want to know? Not once, no, not twice, not 3 times, 20 times. I spent 2 hours trying to get footage of me beating this guy, and all I got is this voice in my head telling me I'm not good enough, so thanks Dark Souls. If you want to see what it's like to fight this guy, then here's a quick montage. 4 Kings is probably the second DPS check in the game. It's basically a race to who can kill who first, because if you don't kill them in time, you might be forced into a situation where you have to fight 3 or even 4 of them at once, which will never land well. The 4 Kings use both magic and strong attacks, both of which have the capacity to kill you in one hit. They also have an attack which, depending on how close you are, will either suck you up and deal a shit ton of damage, or an AoE blast which deals a shit ton of damage. While heavy armor could work against this boss, I found that being as quick as possible is optimal for these guys. Basically, two-hand your weapon and try to kill them before another one spawns, and because you probably won't have much time to heal, do it while the other one is spawning. Finally killing this boss after an hour of recording brought me an unmatched euphoria. Really incredible boss. Color Meat is yet another incredible DLC boss that is a very tough battle that takes both patience and confidence. One thing I don't like about it, however, is the way you can access the fight. I mean, first you have to beat Artorias, then get the crest key from a mimic, head back to the place you fought Artorias, talk to Hawkeye Goth, die to the dragon, talk to Goth again, then this beautiful cutscene plays, and then you can fight it. And boy, what a fight it is. Color Meat is a boss that requires precise rolls because if this dude hits you, you will feel it. Even with your shield up, the dude will not hold back. He's also got a huge range of attacks that each hit incredibly hard. Whether he swipes his head, dashes at you, or shoots his magic, his attacks have the capacity to destroy you. This fight could also go for over 7 to 8 minutes, so be prepared to fight for 7 minutes only to get killed by your own mistake. Anyways, this boss is an incredibly fun fight and one that will have you on your toes for 10 minutes. Hornstein Smo. If you listen carefully, you'll hear gamers across the globe either ejaculate or shit themselves. On multiple playthroughs, this has always been something that I dreaded doing. Once you see the cutscene, you know you're in for some shit, and then the music starts playing. A beautiful orchestral piece whose grandiose personality perfectly matches the swagger of Hornstein Smo. Hearing this music is like hearing a phone alarm for gamers because of the sheer amount of pain one goes through fighting these guys. The fear you have when you see this ogre-sized guy with a huge mallet and this small yet agile guy with a spear is unmatched in any game I've ever played. Most of the fight is waiting for a window where you could hit one of them, which could honestly take almost a minute. I've heard this be described as a dance between you and the bosses, and I couldn't think of a better description. I've also heard people say that this fight is unfair, but I couldn't disagree more. While yes, it's 2 against 1, they're still most definitely prone to greediness as we are. And that's one thing I love most about Dark Souls, is the fairness in most of the fights. But back to the fight. After you kill one, a cutscene triggers where the one you didn't kill becomes more powerful through the use of electricity, and also their health bar regenerates, so that's great. They also each have an AoE attack that if it hits you, could kill you in one hit. Also, this fight is incredibly long. This footage you're seeing now is a full 10-minute fight I had against these guys, but the euphoria you feel after beating them is like no other. The Knight Artorius is probably the most aggressive boss you'll fight in this game. There's no time for rest or composure, it's just pure chaos from the moment you step into the arena. And his aggressiveness with the raw power he has makes for one of the most challenging fights you'll ever have. Oh, and with this, he does an AoE attack occasionally that makes him stronger each time, so don't think it'll get easier if you're passive. I think each of my runs through this game, it took me at least an hour to overcome this guy. And you'll notice that I eventually broke down and used Havel's armor. I know, I'm ashamed of it as well. In fact, my computer shared the same sentiment because right as I switched to Havel's gear, it turns off. Aside from that though, do not expect another Sanctuary Guardian from these DLC bosses. You'll have no time to contemplate your moves, you only have your instinct to trust. Also, while spending this amount of time usually gets me down, this one had me excited just because of how fast this guy is. It's just an incredibly fun fight and the crown jewel of not only the Dark Souls DLC, but Dark Souls in general. The odds seemed so stacked up against you and you were able to defy him. Minazaki once said that he never intended on making the Souls series any more difficult than any other game. Rather, it was the difficulty that would give players a sense of accomplishment by overcoming tremendous odds. And I think that the Knight Artorius perfectly achieves this. And that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it, and if you're stuck around for this long, subscribe. It's free and you can undo it at any time. Thanks for watching, see ya.